This is Global Order. I'm Hindol Sengupta. I'm absolutely delighted that Air Chief Marshal Arup Raha has consented to join this program once again. The Air Chief Marshal knows more than most other people about one thing that I want to discuss with him. There is a lot of talk about how China is progressing in its fighter jet program, including recently the showcase of its fifth generation fighter jets. In this grand battle of aviation, where does India really stand? Can India effectively compete? All of this we will discuss with the Air Chief Marshal, who knows more about this subject than most other people. Sir, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Hindal. Uh, Good morning to everyone.
I want to begin by asking you, when you look at new news, as it were, that China is progressing very swiftly in its advanced fighter jet programs, including fifth generation programs. Talk to us a little bit about the context of all of this. How do you see it?
Fine. You see, we all know that the hard power, military power in terms of the army, navy, air and space domain capabilities would secure peace through deterrence as also winning conflicts or wars in the future. So the importance, especially of aerospace domain capabilities, is what we are going to discuss mainly in the context of Chinese capabilities, recent developments, the rapid improvements in their capabilities in these domains. Now, a little bit of historical perspective is essential before I go into this, because comparison with a specific country, their equipment, etc., would not be the right thing to do, because India is a large country, and today somebody is our adversary or an enemy. Tomorrow, that nation can become a friend, which happens in international politics so often. There are so many examples of it. And therefore, I would actually discuss the capabilities in terms of hard power, as also a little bit of soft power, when we compare with China and India. Now, the wars are becoming not short and swift, that the perception in the recent times, but it is becoming a protracted, long wars. Two examples in the Middle East: the Israelis versus the Palestinians, Hamas, Iran and Lebanon, etc., as also the Ukraine and Russian war, which is already 2 years plus. So even very powerful nations like Russia, which inherited the powers of superpower then USSR, is finding it very difficult to conclude a conflict. So we have to prepare for not only winning a short border skirmish or a slightly protracted, about a month-long border war, but also terminate a protracted conflict to the desirable end result that is essential in a long-run conflict. For that, we require to have capabilities, armed forces capabilities, hard power, as also depth of military industrial complex in terms of length, width, depth, so that we can ramp up production of military hardware, weapon systems, equipment to fight a long war and ensure that it ends in a more favorable terms at the end of the war. So now, let me give you a brief perspective of the last 4 or 5 decades, how the Chinese have gone so far ahead of many nations, including India, and of course, try to catch up with the US and the Western powers. In this regard, I think first thing that comes to my mind is national aspirations. We all know that China wants to be a superpower. It wants to topple the US as the only superpower as of now. And at worst, it will settle for a bipolar world, if not unipolar, with China at the top. And they have worked very hard, I would say, in the last 5 decades to bridge the gap and start competing with the US in all domains. And they have reached almost, two-third way up to my mind. And very soon, in another 20 years' time, 2 decades' time, they will definitely catch up with the US in many areas, including hard power or military power. But India's intentions, or in terms of aspiration as a nation, is quite different. We don't want to be a superpower. We want to be a regional power. We want that the world should be multipolar. Asia should be multipolar, and so that there is peace and stability and tranquility in the region, especially Indian Ocean region, and I would say Indo-Pacific area. So, but this contention is not accepted by China, and they actually have disdain for India. They do not consider India as a competitor, and but doesn't matter. That's how the perception of the Chinese people are, which has been built over a period of time through their capabilities that they've displayed in every sphere of activity, be it sports, infrastructure, railways, roadways, trade, commerce, economy, everywhere they have done exceptionally well because of the focused approach to various things. And their main objective is to be number one and topple the US. So that is the first thing. And second is in terms of economic power. Without the economic power, you cannot be a big power. You cannot be a superpower. So they have worked very hard to grow out of the problems that India and China faced in 1980s. We are actually at the same level in terms of GDP, in terms of economic growth, in terms of agrarian economy, and a very unbalanced economy, a large number of population living below the poverty line. But they have overcome all that. And how? I think the US and the Western world played a very important role in pulling out China out of isolation, admitted them in WTO, World Trade Organization, gave them the globalization plank, and also helped them with technologies and demands for goods and services. So China became the manufacturing hub of the world. Because others wanted it, they are gaining from it in terms of goods that they're enjoying, etc. But at the same time, the whole world became very vulnerable because entire manufacturing process of goods and services, etc., was from one source, that is China. And the entire world realized the vulnerability during the COVID pandemic of having a single hub, single supply chain in the world, China. So that is being diversified. So that is being seen that a lot of diversification of the chain of supply chains and manufacturing hubs are being affected all over the world. India is also gaining from it, especially Southeast Asia, I would say. So that is the second thing. They have grown economically very rapidly, and now they have the economic strength to invest everywhere else. They started the much, I would say, much ambitious BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, all across the world, building infrastructure not only for themselves, for others, to have a huge strategic footprint and control over strategic matters all across the world. So that is a very, very important one, and it is much more ambitious than the Marshall Plan of the US post Second World War for the recovery of the devastated nations in Europe and Japan. And now they have enough monies to not only build infrastructure, but also invest in the military industrial complex. You require huge funds, a good budget to support the R&D, to create military industrial complex infrastructure where things can be researched and developed, military equipment, so that they are really strong. And they have done very well in this regard. And that's why they are, by leaps and bounds, they're going ahead of India and catching up with the US as well. So in this context, I think India is kind of a laggard, I would say, in terms of economic development. It has been sturdy and not very, only in the recent times, I think last 10, 15 years, that we have seen a lot of improvements in the GDP growth, etc. And our Indian diaspora is doing exceptionally well, and our own, youth power in terms of skill sets and in terms of experience, in terms of intelligence and capabilities are going to take us forward. So that is one thing positive, especially with the free enterprise or the private sector, individuals. India is going to take off, and it is now the leading nation in terms of economic growth. So we are on our path for recovery and in trying to catch up with China, if you think so. But definitely we need soft power as well as hard power. So that is the context I wanted to set for you. If you want to build capabilities in terms of hard power, you require a good budget, I was mentioning. How much was the budget of the Chinese armed forces in 2023? It was 300 billion. It was 300 billion US dollars officially. Unofficially, sources mention that it was more than double that. That's close to 700 billion US dollars. Whereas India spent in 2023 only about 1.9% of its GDP, amounting to approximately 90 billion US dollar. So see the difference is nearly 3.5 to 4 times. No, it's almost 7 times our budget for the defense. So if you don't have enough monies on the table for development of your hard power, military industrial complex, research and development, you will lag behind. And therefore, to my mind, the status is such, the problem that you face in terms of economic capability to invest in military industrial complex and research development of weapon systems and equipment, I think we are nowhere. And therefore, we have to accept that reality till the time our economic development takes shape and we can spend more monies for hard power capabilities.
I
So
want to
that
ask
is
you,
the only
sir,
thing.
if I may ask you, some people, especially when you come to cutting edge R&D,
Yes,
things like the highest level, building a fighter jet is one of the most complicated things, even in the
yes.
world of military, right? I mean, submarines and fighter jets are two most complicated things to build, apart from, of course, certain kinds of nuclear weapons. Now, some people ask the question that the Chinese also have a whole propaganda. Now, in your opinion, how cutting edge is their technology really when you look at their recent announcements of fifth generation fighter jets and so on and so forth? How much of it is absolute cutting edge reality competing with the US, and how much it is perhaps a little bit of Chinese propaganda?
Yes, you know, uh, both ways they have a lot of improvement in their capabilities in terms of technologies, the advanced technologies. And of course, a communist state, a government is totally controlled, the media is controlled, nobody has a second opinion, only opinion is from the state controlled media houses, etc. So there will be a lot of propaganda, and it is very obvious. The claim that they make, sixth generation, fifth generation, well, some of the features that you can see physically when they fly and when they display their hardware and equipment, yes, they appear to be similar to the fifth generation fighter aircraft, fifth generation weapon systems all across the world. But when it comes to performance, when it comes to its maneuverability, its weapon system, etc., we still have a lot of doubts. I'll tell you why. They do not exercise with any other, especially the Air Force, with any other air forces in the world. Whereas India, especially its armed forces and the Air Force, operates against friendly, powerful nations' air forces. So that gives you the real signature of your capability. Where do you stand compared to the best? And I'll tell you, Indian Air Force's performance have been exceptional. In all the exercises that you do, close to about 30 odd nations, all powerful nations, I would say, they have a lot of appreciation for the Indian equipment, Indian performance, and performance of its professional pilots, engineers, etc. So that is one thing. So we do not know how good is Chinese equipment equipment that they are claiming to be fifth and sixth generation. I really don't understand what is sixth generation, frankly speaking. I don't find any difference between the fifth and the sixth generation. Fifth generation is quite clear to me in terms of stealth technology, super cruise technology, low observable RCS or radars will not be able to pick up very easily or only at a short distance, and it will carry a lot of weapons internally stored for cruise and long distances. Weapon solutions will be at very high speeds, so it'll have very long range, etc., etc. But sixth generation, I really don't know what you mean by sixth generation. All these features are there in the sixth generation as well. So that is one thing is not very clear to me. The arms industry always plays up all these technologies because they have a vested interest in selling their hardware and equipment. So you got to be very careful when there are a lot of claims, etc. So I think we should be happy with four and a half generation. Yes, fifth generation is also required, and I think India is working towards it. I'll come to that later. But I must tell you that in the one area where they wanted to bridge the gap, close the gap with the US, is getting hold of critical technology. Without getting hold of critical and most advanced state-of-the-art technologies, because armed forces, especially the Air Force, is very, very, technology savvy. It operates always on the border of state-of-the-art technologies. So they wanted to close that gap. They knew the only way they can topple the US is catch up and go ahead. So they are making concerted effort, focused effort with a lot of monies, R&D, and they have taken two steps in this regard to develop the critical technologies and close the gap with the US. Only problem with this effort of theirs is that they're trying to close the gap with US, and they have reached a long distance in the way, but it is also increasing the gap between India and China. India and China, definitely, because they are closing the gap with the US, but we are falling behind because of the capabilities that they're achieving now. Unless we have the monies for R&D development and we have will to change things, will to achieve. Atmanirbharta may not be enough as a slogan. It has to be worked out on the ground and produce the results. Okay. So what have they done? They use two-prong approach to close this technology gap with the US. First of all, it started a long time back, is reverse engineering. They purchased huge quantities of weapons, Army, Navy, Air Force, from the former Soviet Union and Russia. And they use those technologies of these equipment to reverse engineer and produce it in their own factories. So, which they have been very, very successful. I must say that Chinese are very smart, very intelligent, very good at this, and they have produced replicas almost with similar capabilities and similar features. As far as the Air Force is concerned, I think the the aircraft J-10, J-11, J-17, J-16 are products copied from the former Soviet and Russian equipment in their own factories. And similarly, they have produced J-20, and now you're claiming J-36, which are FGFA, fifth and sixth generation aircraft. Also, I believe that they've achieved through siphoning of state-of-the-art technologies, through money power, through, I would say, kind of technology espionage from the US and Russia. I'm not sure this is what I hear. And they produce the J-20 and J-36, as well as the H-20 bomber aircraft, which is a supersonic stealth bomber that we have seen with the Americans as such. So they have succeeded both ways. And I must give them credit, and the whole world must give them credit that they're very focused and they've achieved these technology gains almost comparable to the US or the other developed armed forces in the world. So that is very important. And now, as far as aviation sector is concerned, and I can tell you, unless you're very good in the aviation sector, both military aviation as well as civil aviation sector, nobody will recognize that nation as a powerful nation, a leading nation in the world. So, if you're going to be dependent on purchases from other countries for equipment, especially high tech equipment, then you are nowhere. You will remain dependent on them. So, effort in this regard in India through the DRDO and even the private sector to achieve R&D, and through R&D achieve, I mean, the technologies which are desirable, the state of the art, fifth generation, whatever it is important. But our progress has been very, very tardy. You all know that the LCA, Light Combat Aircraft, Tejas, has taken more than 3 decades to fructify. And a lot of money has been invested, a lot of time has gone past. We are producing that aircraft, but we are still dependent on others, especially America, for the main propulsion system, the engine. The Kaveri engine, which was supposed to have been produced by DRDO lab, GTRE, that is Gas Turbine Research Establishment of the DRDO, despite 30 years gone and I don't know how many thousand you know crores have been spent, the time overrun, cost overrun, we have still not got the Kaveri engine with adequate power to for the as the propulsion system of the LCA. So we are now buying, we have bought, in fact, a lot of GE, General Electric engine from the US, F404, for powering the LCA Tejas. And now they are delaying the delivery of the engines that you've contracted with them, and as much as 2 years. So our entire schedule is very much behind the timetable that you have drawn out. So it is
Something
working
important you're
very well.
saying, Air
Yeah.
Chief Marshal, if I may. You are saying that the Chinese have been able to not only procure but also reverse engineer
Yes. Yes.
cutting edge technology. Now, some of these may have some questions, but at a broad level, they have achieved a lot. And there is no doubt that they are, at an effective position to challenge America, if not today, but very soon, maybe in the next 2 decades. And they're certainly, comparable with many developed economies as far as the technology is concerned. You're saying in India's case, for instance, the example that you're giving, the Tejas, 3 decades have gone by. We haven't got an engine. We are still dependent on America. America, is, as all newspaper reports also suggest, now the GE engines are delayed. So our entire schedule is delayed. Where effectively can we actually compete? I mean, I know you pointed out that we compete with, or we, practice and, we do these war gaming with competing nations and very serious nations. And therefore, our capabilities are constantly tested and is out for everybody to see. But in terms of real power, in terms of material resources that we have, where do we really stand?
Okay. Let me tell you that LCA project uh, has taken off, but the production rate of aircraft, after the technology has been proven, and it has got very good record in terms of flying and its capabilities, but production rate is just about 8 aircraft per year. When is it going to be ramped up? Our need is at least 3 squadrons per year, because we are already down by 10 to 12 squadrons from the normal strength that we want to have as desirable strength. So production is not even 1 squadron per year. So I think there is a lack of will and lack of effort and lack of drive to get these things going. I don't know about the fund position. Second is that LCA Mark II, AMCA, it's on the drawing board for too long. When will we get something going and some assurance that this will happen in next decade or so? To my mind, is going to take much longer, going by the records of our DRDO and HAL, the production agencies. So I'm not really very hopeful that we'll have these two advanced aircraft, LCA Mark II, as well as AMCA, Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, which is the FGFA, fifth generation fighter aircraft of our own. There has to be solid push in this regard, which is, to my mind, on the ground. I do not see much happening. At least I don't read much in this. I'm not in touch with the government agencies and the DRDO labs, so I'll not be able to confirm what is the status. But what I see, despite the promises, nothing much has happened in this regard. And As far as technology is concerned, engine propulsion system is very important. We have failed in getting the right kind of engine, and we are having trouble in getting enough engines to productionize more combat aircraft. Now we got MOU signed recently for transfer of technology and manufacture, license manufacture of G more advanced engine 414 F414. But I'm skeptical in terms of the 20% of the technology that we require. It is the most critical part of engine. It is called the hot parts, the metallurgy for construction of the combustion chamber, where the temperatures and pressures are very, very high. And then the turbine blades, which is immediately behind the combustion chamber, which is exposed to very high temperatures of the burned gases and pressures, which actually runs the engine, and the compressor blades, which is ahead of the engine. So these three components, special metallurgy is required, which we do not have. And nobody, no friend is going to give it to us on the platter. So this transfer of technology of the most crucial parts of engine is not going to happen. We have to work on our own and make sure that we achieve it. And we can do it if we have concerted effort, employ the brains of coming out of IITs, technical institutions, give them enough funds, give them incentives, and I'm sure we'll achieve it in as short a period as 5 to 7 years.
I
And
want to
we,
ask you,
yeah.
sir, this failure of will that you have pointed out several times now, and failure of what you call concentrated effort, where does this, how does this, in what ways does it make us vulnerable? Explain that to us, please.
you know, to be frank, we have a problem. Unlike the US, where they understand to remain a leader of the world, you have to have adequate funds of research and development and, and produce equipment and weapon systems that will keep them ahead of the rest of the pack. Okay. And so they have a very huge interest in a military industrial complex, and they export a lot of equipment and get a lot of funds. Similarly, the Chinese are doing the same thing, but we are lagging behind, so we are vulnerable because we lack the will. Unless we have funds and the will to get things going, we will remain very vulnerable, because Chinese have gone very far ahead in terms of may not be technology, I would say, in terms of numbers. So technology is one aspect, other is quantity. So quality and quantity. So quantity wise, they are very far ahead. We can never close this gap in next 2 decades or 3 decades with indigenous capability. As so our procurement processes are very, very long, and no questions asked. Like the 114, 114 fighter aircraft that was proposed post 36 Rafale aircraft are procured instead of 126, but it's almost 10 years gone. Nothing has happened. So that means there is lack of will, lack of political will, lack of understanding of the highest authorities in the country, be it political, be it bureaucrats. And of course, I would say even the armed forces are responsible to a certain extent, but I think most of it is depends on political will and the bureaucratic will. They lack understanding, and therefore they are putting the country in a very vulnerable position. That is what my worry is. If the gap is too much, then your deterrence will break down. Deterrence is through capability to secure peace, because the adversary will be afraid of the repercussions that may result in a conflict. That means we must have good capability. If we don't have that, and now, our fighter squadron strength has reduced so much, and we are going to lose another 10, 15 squadrons in another 10, 15 years. So unless we have the replacements, if you take 10 years to decide what you will buy, then I think we are in big trouble. That shows the lack of appreciation of the of the or political authorities, bureaucratic authorities. All this talk about forming a new committee to find out where we are and where have we gone wrong is actually a whitewash, because everybody knows where you are going wrong, and now you are forming a committee so that you can delay it further. So I know it's laughable to my mind, and I'm not very happy with the situation. And it has been known to everyone what needs to be done. If you do not have the monies, then it says so. No, not the monies. We manage it this, whatever it is. I don't want to get perturbed with this, because this is how things are. But we'll never be able to close the gap in terms of quantity. But quality, yes, you must have the quality of weapon systems at par with the rest of the world, even with, say, 10 years delay, etc. But it has to be there, or else that technological gap and quantity gap, which you cannot close, to my mind, or bridge, is going to break down the deterrence, and we'll have a conflict for sure. Even Pakistan is going to get the fifth generation fighter aircraft from China. They're very keen to give it to them also. So can you imagine if we have the squadron strength same as that of Pakistan Air Force, what will happen to the security situation? What will happen to the deterrence? No, there is nothing left to imagination. It is already understood. So that is my worry in terms of deterrence breaking down if you don't build certain amount of capability. I'm not saying you have one for one in a contest with an adversary. That is not desirable. I think we have our own priorities, but we have to have basic minimum deterrence value to prevent a conflict.
At this point in time, in your opinion, we don't, or we are very close to not having enough deterrence embedded in our systems, isn't it?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And no, I think everything is clear that how we need to build that deterrence capability. We need effort. We require monies. We need to be sincere. We cannot just say that okay, these are the prohibited list. You will not buy these equipment from outside. But where is the effort in producing indigenously? See the LCA. Not even one cotton per year after it was productionalized about 7, 8 years back. Okay, where is Mark 1A? Not on site. Where is LCA Mark 2? Where is AMCA? So it's all big talk and big promises, but on ground, nothing much is happening to my mind. And for that, you require concerted effort. You don't require committees, but you require people who will take stock and make sure that the action plan that has been worked out is implemented.
One of the things you pointed out, Air Chief Marshal, is that we were going to get all these Rafale jets. We only got a small number of the total number that we were going to get. What is your sense about where that is going? That procurement program is going?
Yeah, what I read, I have not asked anyone who is knowledgeable, but what I read from the newspapers, etc., and TV debates, that 114 aircraft, which was being planned to be procured, uh, is still not taken off. Almost 8 years gone after I left service. So I do not think it will fructify, because to my mind, all political authorities are very, very scared, very, very sensitive to the orchestration, the political orchestration that goes on whenever you have a big ticket item purchased. Okay. And for purchasing such equipment, we take 10, 15, 20 years. And yet, at the end of it, the result is zero at times. We just scuttle the entire things. That actually portrays a very poor image of our sincerity, of our capability to determine what you want to buy, and putting to test so many people, so many agencies, so many vendors, and then at the end of it, the result is zero, is something we need to work on, and that is not acceptable. The time overrun and the cost overrun and the capability loss are very important. So therefore, we have to amend the process of acquisition. I'll tell you once, one in my interaction with the finance minister, he mentioned to me, Chief, why is it taking so long to buy the MMRCA? So I asked her surprised the question. because I thought they would know, especially the finance minister. I said, sir, there are problems in terms of procedure that we follow, the process we follow. Very little accountability. You can scuttle a thing after at the end of 10 years of effort. And he only said that, but there are so many aircraft in the world which is proven being used by various nations, and the cost discovery is there. Why did you buy them off the shelf? That's a very good proposal. So I think that is what we should do. All this show about having an open tender or trial, this thing, that thing, which takes 10 to 15 years. What are you trying to prove? We require certain capability, and we know which are the aircraft in the world available, and we have the cost known to us. So let's buy off the shelf on government to government agreement. And most of the acquisition, especially in the Air Force, has been through government to government agreements. The 272 Sukhoi 30s that you purchased from Russia, was it through an open tender, bidding, etc.? No. The government had decided, the Air Force has helped in terms of determining it and certification, and then we flew this aircraft and the contract was signed. So all this, time-consuming procedure of procurement needs a good review and change if you really are serious about capability development and get rid of cost overruns and time overruns, etc., unless we can produce it ourselves.
We are, of course, very far away from producing it ourselves. One final word, Air Chief Marshal. Any silver lining to this entire situation at all that you can maybe, as a final word, talk to us about?
Yeah, I think, I wanted to speak about that right in the beginning, that DRDO has done exceptionally well in certain areas. You take the LCA project, the fly-by-wire digital control system was supposed to have come from the US, but after 1998, that May nuclear device being set off, the whole world clamped down and they denied this technology to us. Fly-by-wire, digital control system for the LCA. But Indian scientists produced it in, I think, next 1 decade's time, and that is what is being used in the LCA. So fly-by-wire control system, which is a very difficult technology, we have mastered it. It is quadri-redundant. That means it has four systems to come over the failures, and it is going to be used in rest of the aircraft as well. Similarly, we have also through the LCA project mastered the production of aerostructures, composite materials, which are very light but strong, very, very effective in terms of reducing the weight and giving strength to the airframes. So that has also been done. That is being used extensively in the Tejas. We have, mastered the technology for air-to-air refueling. We have got technologies for long range, beyond visual range air-to-air missiles. The BrahMos, I would say cruise missile. It is being used by all the three services in the air to ground mode, surface to surface mode, and sea to surface mode, etc. And with extensive range, more than 300 kilometers. And if it is air launch, it could be 400, 450 kilometers range, very accurate supersonic cruise missile. So we have got a lot of capabilities already. The software defined radio, which is almost jam proof, electronic warfare systems, and a host of other things. We have the platform from where we can actually take off to create new aircraft and weapon platforms, weapon systems. We require more monies. We require timelines for achieving each and every milestones, and that is what needs to be monitored very closely. So we have a lot of I think achievements, but we should not be sitting on our laurels, but we should build much farther because others are progressing very rapidly. We cannot be too far behind in terms of technology that we need state-of-the-art technologies.
This silver
And in
lining, of
addition,
course, this
yes.
silver lining, of course, reinforces the point you were making that it is essentially what is missing in some cases is our determined, concentrated effort. Because where that determined, concentrated effort exists, obviously we are able to do it in the
Absolutely
example
right.
that you just showcased, right?
Yeah. I
So
also want
it's
to
very
mention
interesting.
that
This,
the we have reached the threshold from where not only we can build more and advanced weapon systems, weapon platforms, fighter aircraft, but I think we need to do something about civil aviation as well. India buys or is going to buy in next 10 years time 5,000 civil aviation aircraft for passengers and cargo. From whom? We're going to buy it from the Boeing, we're going to buy it from Airbus and some other companies. Why don't you start something in India? Because that is one area we are spending billions of US dollars to procure this aircraft for our civil aviation industry to flourish. We are very happy.
which is why the Chinese have started commercial air.
Absolutely. Chinese have already done it. So we have a good model. Chinese model is really good to my mind. We need focus, concentration, etc. And we have talent. We have the private sector. We are doing exceptionally well. And if we can actually integrate them in our venture for procuring technologies, I think we'll be successful because they are as patriotic as the public sector or the armed forces. So we should not ignore them, include them, and give them the incentive to do something indigenously for the armed forces sector. Civil aviation is very important. We should not be happy with just creating ground infrastructure, runways, terminals, cargo complex, passenger complex, and we are boasting about it. We What about the actual capability? Developing aircraft, developing propulsion system, developing other equipment that go into the civil aviation. What about the MRO? The aircraft may cost 5,000 crore USD, but in its lifetime, about 30 to 40 years, for the MRO, maintenance, repair, and overall replacement of engines and components, spares, etc., you'll be sending 3 to 4 times that value of your procurement. So all these monies are going abroad. If we can do it ourselves, all the monies will stay here, and we'll have a lot of jobs. There'll be prosperity. The ancillary industries will flourish, and we will flourish economically, and the whole world will look up at us as a leader in advanced technologies. So I don't think that is happening. I don't hear anything, nor do I read anything on this aspect.
I hope, of course, all of this changes quite swiftly. Thank you very much. We leave it at that. Air Chief Marshal Arup Raha, thanks very much for your time today and from explaining all these things in great detail. As you pointed out again and again, India can bridge many of these gaps if there is a collective concentrated will, there is a collective concentrated focus, and we do hope that focus will come. Thanks very much, sir, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hindol. All the best.